Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the highlights of the draft clause of the 2012 Finance Bill that were released last week. Before Sophie comes on to talk about what was in the Finance Bill, I want to say a few brief words about what wasn't. And that was the draft statutory residence test. This was perhaps one of the most exciting developments that was announced in the summer, but it hasn't made it into the final version. The government does say that it remains committed to the form of the test it's announced, but that it won't be in effect until 2013. I think that all practitioners have regarded the idea of the test as a very good thing, and with our glasses half full, we can only look at the delay as a chance to get it right first time, rather than to implement something that didn't quite work. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Sophie, who's going to talk about some of the clauses that did make it.
One of the measures for which we saw draft legislation last Tuesday was the proposal to expand the remittance basis to allow inward investment into the UK. In a nutshell, the idea is that UK resident non-domiciliaries will be able to use offshore income and gains to invest in UK companies without that investment being treated as a remittance of the offshore income and gains. This is really quite a dramatic and pretty meaningful expansion of the remittance basis, and clearly, if it's right, could be very attractive in terms of positioning the UK for further inward investment. The devil is of course in the detail, and so far the detail looks pretty promising. Fundamentally, how it works is that any UK company, provided it's unlisted and it can be AIM-listed, which carries on a commercial trade, including developing residential property, should be a qualifying company, and the investment can take the form of shares or securities, so shares or loan notes. The investor can also be a director of the company and can also receive, if they're an employee, remuneration in the normal way. When the investment is realised or disposed of, provided the proceeds are taken out of the UK within 45 days or reinvested, the original remittance won't be taxable, but obviously the gain realised will be. However, and it's an important however, if for example the investment is made through a trust, there shouldn't be any UK capital gains tax until generally a distribution is received in the UK. So there are all sorts of ways of minimising the exposure to gains on the eventual investment. Also, and this is quite an interesting opportunity as well, it may well be possible to combine this, and it seems to me it really should be, with other statutory reliefs, such as entrepreneurs' relief or the new seed enterprise investment scheme, so that a whole host of reliefs can be doubled up. It seems to be the intention to make this opportunity very broad, and whilst there are anti-avoidance measures, they seem very sensible and not overly restrictive. In terms of further expansion of this measure, it was hoped partnerships would be included. They're not yet, but it is interesting to see that there may well be further legislation, as commented in the draft documents released last week, allowing partnerships to be invested in and also considering a pre-investment clearance procedure so that you can know whether the company would indeed be a qualifying company for these purposes. So I think for the moment, it is a very optimistic measure. The legislation looks very sensible, and let's see where it gets to in the Finance Bill.
Thank you, Sophie. The only other measure we want to cover today was the relief from inheritance tax, where more than 10% of estate is given to charity. Again, this was announced in the summer, but the government has responded to the consultation by making the relief more flexible and applying a wider set of circumstances, and this is very much to be welcomed. It will be of particular interest to testators who are leaving more than 4% of their estate to charity already, as increasing that legacy to 10% will benefit both the charity and their other beneficiaries, only the taxman losing out. Quite whether this will have the effect of encouraging charitable giving in the way the government hopes remains to be seen, but it's certainly a step in the right direction.
Well, thank you for listening to our highlights of draft legislation for Finance Bill 2012, and we look forward to updating you when the legislation actually gets enacted. Thanks very much.
Thank you.